Hey, what's up, guys? Brett here from FBAExcel. Had a good question in the Facebook group, and figured I'd shoot a quick video here to hopefully clear up some things. So I'm just going to read each one of these questions and then hop over to AdTactix and answer them. All right, so how often do you optimize? You wrote that you do the optimization in weekly. In this case, do you still take the 30 days as the period or just the last week? And he's struggling because it doesn't make a lot of sense to, if you're optimizing multiple times per week, let's say, to take that longer date range. And really what it comes down to is you're gathering data to make a educated guess on what you should bid, based on, in AdTactix case, there's a few formulas which you can actually download. So Apex is one formula. The component that deals with the conversion calculations for what to make the bid, which in this case is the blue number, it's going to be based on a kind of factor ratio calculation. And there's other formulas that a lot of PPC tools use and kind of PPC gurus in the space, if you will. Revenue per click times target A cost is a really popular one. That's another kind of ratio based bid formula, and all you're doing is you're trying to take the data that you have, and if your goal is like a target A cost, you're typically taking that target A cost into account and doing a ratio based adjustment based on the current performance of that keyword and the target A cost that you want to get to. So without getting into a ton of math equations and looking at that, just know that that's kind of the goal, and it's going to be based on a lot of factors as far as how your keywords are performing. You've got placements to consider, you've got the competitors that are bidding against you in the auction, and then you've got time. So the time component's important because if you don't have a lot of conversions over that span that you're using to gather the data and make that adjustment on, it's going to be really kind of herky-jerky, where if you have a bigger sample size worth of data, over time, as you make that consistent adjustment, it's gonna migrate towards the kind of optimal bid value. So that's really the intention of using a 30-day range, and it's a rolling range, right? So if you optimize your bids a couple times a week and you're gathering the new data from the last time that you optimized within that new 30 days, it's gonna keep hopefully refining that bid closer and closer to the optimal bid based on, you've got a big variable in your listing. So if you improve your listing and your conversion rate improves, then and your sales go up as a result of that, that bid will hopefully move in the right direction, and your PPC will perform better and better over time. So there's a lot of variables. It's not a perfect science by any means, and but I guess hopefully that kind of touches on this first one, is struggling since the 30 days would not be correct in the case weekly optimization, but weekly might be also too short. Yeah, so weekly is really too short in a lot of cases, especially on newer brands that don't have a lot of conversion data, because you don't have that conversion component to optimize by. So in that case, you're really trying to, the way these formulas work, in the case of like revenue per click times target A costs and the Apex formula, these white headers here, all of these deal with non-converting targets. So the whole goal of kind of this section is to either decrease the bid if you come out of the gate and say you're manually bidding high. That's what I recommend in this blue column. So you always want to test new targets to see if they're going to convert right away, just to get an idea if it's a highly relevant keyword and you're going to do well, it's one you can likely scale. But if it's not, this click limit is going to be a component that can move the bid automatically down for you. If you get, for example, more than 10 clicks, you can start decreasing the bid, or you can set these parameters whatever you want. Likewise, impression limit. If you're come out of the gate, you're not bidding high enough, you may not be getting any impressions. So you're going to set this at a threshold that if it hasn't hit this in whatever that span is, it's going to start incrementing it up by a set value. So my strategy is I typically don't use this as much, and I'll come out of the gate just bidding really high, top of search. I want to know right off the bat how my keyword's going to perform. And I'll manually check in the search that I'm getting top of search as well. And if I'm not, I'll make sure I make the adjustments to get that. And then once you give it a good test sample size, and hopefully you get a conversion, then you can flip over, and it's actually automatically going to flip over if you're using the formula-based bid formulas in AdTactix, and start using these parameters at that point. So, you've, in the sense of the Apex formula, you've got a couple ACoS thresholds, which if you've got a good ACoS at that point, it's going to start incrementing the bid up by a percentage. So that's what this value is. If you've got a span set between these numbers, it's actually going to keep the bid the same. In this example, I have them set identical. So it's going to, for any ACoS above 25%, in this case, it's going to start doing a ratio calculation off of the target ACoS. It does take into account in the Apex formula your cost per click. There's some extra parameters you can set that that toggle a few things on and off, but revenue per clicks is similar. You've got the non-converting target parameters over here, and then you've got in the revenue per click times target ACoS formula, it's just a ratio calculation of the current revenue that keyword's kicking out, which is just your sales, divided by the clicks times your target ACoS. So it's a pretty simple formula to understand, and you'll notice that if you have a target ACoS that's 25% and you're running at a higher ACoS, your bid after you make the adjustment is going to go down from whatever it was. And that again is just over time trying to get to that perfect bid to where you're meeting your criteria. And the more data you have to do that, the more accurate it's going to be over time. So with the 7-day concept, you're going to be losing a lot of conversions if you may only make 1 or 2 PPC sales, let's say, in that time. You're using kind of the ratio-based settings in that point, but then the next 7 days you do it, you're downloading that data. You may not have those conversions just because it's so short a span. So it kind of kicks on and off between converting target method and formula method. So if you have a kick-ass account and you're making tons of sales on every PPC keyword, I could see how your date range could shrink and start to utilize tighter ranges. But anyway, the only other thing I'll say is there is an iterative mode in AdTactix that allows you to kind of chase the perfect bid, and that's more of a different concept. You're not using a ratio based calculation to make your adjustments. You're using a increment of a fixed amount, and that's a little more complex for probably the scope of this video, but there is some training in the members area on that formula. And then that one is geared a bit more towards a shorter date range. It is a bit harder to control though, and you'll spend more. So, I'm trying with kind of the AdTactix tool, and my strategy in general is to really have an approach that works well on a variety of niches and accounts, and has the ability to segment things as much as you want, and kind of apply the gas where you want in different areas. So really customizable in that sense. So anyway, got a little long-winded on that answer, but hopefully that makes a bit of sense. So the optimization looks super efficient. However, the setup before running it looks time-consuming. Upload all the supplementary docs. Any recommendation to handle it much? Literally should take you about 5 minutes. I just actually set this copy up. It took me about 5 minutes. The longest part is actually downloading the reports. You can actually set up in Ad Manager if you want to download certain PPC reports. You can set those up kind of on a frequency. There's an automation in Ad Manager to let you do that. And you're doing it maybe 2 times a week, let's say. So it should not take you that much once you get the hang of it. You just got to kind of go through the process a few times in order to kind of dial that in. And we did add a new feature in the snapshot audit. So I'll kind of point you in the direction of the challenge video on this, because we go over how to do it. But there's a new feature here that compiles based on Pareto analysis, which is kind of the 80-20 rule. You can adjust this number as well. So if you wanted to grab more targets, you could shift this up to like 90%. But this allows you to keep a focus on what's really performing well. And I think one of your questions here is leading into this is, why do you not focus on the other 20%? So I'll get to that in a second. But that feature I just showed you, there's a new button under the AdTactix menu here, snapshot audit, add top performing targets to bid override table. It's going to take that Pareto analysis and add any new targets that now meet that criteria to the bottom here, and then update everything automatically. So that really improves kind of your efficiency. And like you said, once this bid override table is set, it's going to be set. So it's a matter of, if you don't want any of this supplemental data, if you're not going to do search term harvesting, if you're not even going to look at the snapshot audit, you don't need to import. All you need to import if you're doing bid optimization is literally your bulk file. So you can import your bulk file and click sync all data. You can skip all this stuff. And that literally should take you 5 minutes from start to finish to download your bulk file. Click that button. And then as soon as you click that button, if you want to sync your bid override table, you click this button. It's going to pull in all the new information for the keywords that you have already put on the bid override table. All your bid optimization settings stay the same unless you want to tweak them. And then that cyclical process is kind of the bid optimization cycle. Once you're comfortable with your bid input settings and you've synced this data, you can come up here and you can run your whichever formula you're using and create your output file and then just upload it. So in that sense, it becomes it's really just 3 quick steps. And then if you haven't watched the challenge, I'd go through that because I do run through an example from start to finish. All right, so like reuse some of the docs files. You don't want to reuse anything because the goal of any optimization cycle is to take into account the newest data and kind of make decisions based off that. A really powerful feature is the target sniper, which that's another point on why to really focus on the top kind of 20% of your performers that are giving you 80% of the results. As you can see, you can monitor on a daily basis kind of the ad metrics, and if you've got some that are really carrying your account, like these ones up here that are 197 orders, 187 orders, you want to really be in tune with what's going on with those. If you're not getting top of search and that's where you perform really well, you want to understand why. So the whole purpose of the 20/80 rule is to get the 20% on your bid override table that are carrying your account, and then really understand why they're carrying your account, and then don't let that momentum drop. And then use some of the other tools like the bulk negations, the inherent bid optimization settings that's going to optimize kind of the wasted ad spend on the underperformers, reallocate that budget into new targets, and putting more gas and fuel to the fire on the stuff that's working. So that's another pretty important concept. So override type, watching your videos, I still do not understand the logic behind the bid override table according to fixed bid override target campaign portfolio account. Do you have any video, Loom, explaining the logic and use cases? Yeah, there's a pretty in-depth video on the actual bid override table setup and the formulas. So I'll point you to that in the reply to this. But to go over a few more examples. All right, so with that snapshot feature that I deployed here, it basically moved over any of the targets that met my criteria for the top 80% of my orders. All of these targets that are on here, and there's not that many, there's 39. This accounts for 80% of the orders in sponsored products, 80% of the orders in sponsored brands, 80% of the orders in sponsored display, which in this case is only 2 targets, and the targets are right over here just for reference. And then anything else that's not on here as a target level override is getting optimized. So it's still getting changed. All the keyword level bids are still getting optimized based on the same ratio based formula in this case at the keyword level. So it's taking into account all the rest of the targets, keyword level metrics, and it's just using these input parameters for the formula. So it's trying to migrate all of those CPCs to 25 to an amount that would equal 25% ACoS. So that's an important concept. It's not like you're ignoring the other 80% of the targets that aren't on here. It's just you're simplifying the optimization kind of dashboard structure so you can focus your time on what really matters. That those 80% of the targets really aren't doing you much good. You'd see almost the exact same results if you just paused every one of them. So it doesn't make sense to make this list 500 rows. It's just going to overwhelm you and you're going to waste time looking at the data. Here I can get on the dashboard what I really need to spend my time optimizing. I can even pull in daily data that's going to give me even more insights. Okay, so that's what this is telling you. And you can expand, all right, so you can expand this. And a lot of users will pull in helium-10 rank data, and that even gives you your organic and sponsored rank on a daily basis. That's a really another important thing to track. All right, and then you also at the campaign level, keep in mind these are target level overrides, you have your placement data over here. So this is really important to know, especially if you're targeting top of search, if you're actually getting top of search on a consistent basis. So we're going to be implementing some of this data into the daily tracking of the target sniper as well. So that'll be even more powerful. But to kind of get in answer your question, some more applications of this is, let's say this one here is my top performer right now. It's 15% ACoS, so I'm not really worried about ACoS at all. Current cost per click is 70 cents. I am using dynamic down only. I do have a modifier of 20%. So an application of if I don't want to use the formulas and I want to really just lay the gas to this keyword and try to scale it up, and again, I'm not as concerned with ACoS, I could set this at $3, something crazy. I'm never going to lose this to any competitor. All right. So there is an example of the blue column is going to override everything. So it's going to ignore any of this. It doesn't even matter. I can keep it there just in case I want to delete this and fall back to kind of the ratio optimization. But in this case, I'm going to apply the gas and I can put that parameter right there. If I had a campaign level override, so let me just do an example there. So I'm just going to grab a campaign from one of these. So there's campaign here. Put the campaign name in there. And I set this to campaign. And I'm going to actually sync this. So it's going to bring in the campaign level data. So if I have multiple keywords in this campaign, which, let me see, which one did I grab? This one. I've only got one keyword in that one, so it's kind of a bad example. Let me do this one. All right, I'm gonna click the sync button. Okay, so there it actually totaled, you can see the numbers are different, 37 orders versus 63. It totaled all the keywords data in that campaign, which there's 4 of them. All right, and this purple means those 2 keywords are actually in this campaign. All right, and that's why you're not seeing a bid preview, you're not seeing an original bid because you got multiple bids. But what you could do is say you want to apply the gas to all the keywords in this campaign for whatever reason. I could set that to a value, I could set that to 2. And in this example, because I have targets within that campaign also on the bid override table, what you're getting confused on, it sounds like, is the precedence. So the precedence is target overrides campaign, overrides portfolio, overrides ASIN. So you could set this bid override table up probably 1,000 different ways, depending on kind of what your strategy is. And in this example, if I set this to 4 and I set this to 3, then when I do my bid preview here, this will just give you an idea of kind of what it's going to look like. You know, this one is set at 4, this one is set at 3, and then anything else, and it looks like there was 2 other keywords out of the 4, is going to be set at 2 in this example. And if I delete this 2, then it's gonna, those 2 keywords that are not a target level override are going to be subject to bid input setting parameters that I specify over here. Okay, so the whole point of kind of segmenting and grouping things together is, again, to simplify this dashboard, because you're just going to be chasing your tail if you're trying to stare at every target you have, you know, in your ad manager. And you want to devote the time that you spend each week into really what matters. And a lot of the time, honestly, should be spent to researching new targets to launch, and, you know, the search term harvesting kind of systematic approach there, developing that. That'll be a lot better time well spent than focusing on the 80% of your keywords that really aren't carrying your account. And then that other time you need to focus on what's really working well and keep improving that. So that's kind of the concept. One good application and use case that I personally would recommend is portfolios and grouping in, for example, you could do branded campaigns typically. You could do ASIN targeting typically does pretty well if you've got defensive ASIN targeting. So that's another thing you could do. And really to deploy this, you would have to group whatever like campaigns into one portfolio that you want to set typically aggressive bid input setting parameters for. And then you would just plug that portfolio in. So let's say it's, for the example of this, it's branded. And you just always want to maintain your branded placement. You could just set this at a really high value. You know, this is kind of a extreme example, but then you would never lose, you know, that kind of placement spot. You could even set your bid input setting parameters as well. If you ever didn't want to use the blue column, you could set those really aggressive when you specify that. And in that example, any portfolios that had this portfolio name would be subject to that bid input setting criteria. And don't lose the fact that you're still optimizing every keyword at that point within these portfolios at the keyword level. It's just you're using one set of bid input setting criteria parameters, where if you break it out into target level overrides, you can see you can segment it all the way down to the target level. So you're getting kind of full room to customize things with this structure. And then the portfolio, it's grouping a bunch of campaigns, and campaigns is grouping a bunch of targets. So I know it's a bit confusing, but once you kind of decide on how you want to lay out this bid override table, it becomes pretty easy, because you can just decide, all right, I want to have, another way to do it if you're using single ASIN campaigns is you could do it by ASIN, and then you have the economics of each product that kind of fit into the picture with your target ACoS, profit margin, stuff like that. But as far as like the most users, what they have the most success with is kind of the strategy here, where you're bringing to light and focusing on your top performers, and kind of the theme I've been talking about here in this video. All right, so hopefully that, I guess, makes a little more sense. And why do you copy 80% of the targets and not all, since the rest is done in a couple clicks? Why not improve their bids of the rest? So yeah, that's kind of back to the point. You're still improving the bids. You're just not bidding as aggressive on certain targets typically. So typically you would, if you have your 80% performance targets that are, 80% of your orders are on here. You could see it was only 39 targets. You're going to want to bid more aggressive on those. And by bid more aggressive, I mean you could set your target ACoS higher. You could, for your good performing targets, you could really boost up the up bid percentage, so you really climb quickly for any targets that are doing well, like this one. So there's a couple different levers you can pull there. The point of the other kind of grouping there in falling back to the account level row is just you can manage everything with one row. It's still gonna, like we've been saying this whole video, it's still gonna change everything at the keyword level and take into account all of the other keyword level performance metrics. It's just gonna optimize them with this one set of bid setting criteria inputs. And then I guess the last point would be, if you do have target level overrides, campaign level overrides, portfolio, and then the last line of defense is your account, that's kind of the total hierarchy. So the total hierarchy goes blue column, and then it's the order of this filter. So it goes target, campaign, portfolio, ASIN, and then it falls back to this account level row. So a bit confusing, but the point of it is to really allow you full flexibility to structure this however you best see fit, and then be able to kind of manage everything really quickly on a weekly basis, have all the data in one place, and so on and so forth. So hopefully that makes a bit more sense. Let me see if Nathan's got any. Yeah, so you don't have to import all the other stuff. A lot of users will use the AdTactix dashboard to try to keep things organized on their high performing targets that they want to maintain rank on. And you can really quickly, if you're doing the search term harvesting or using Keyword Dominator, you can really quickly see what you've already got targeted. That's really one of the key factors in using that dashboard. But yeah, you definitely do not have to. This is just about layering over. For example, you might have one stellar target that deserves, internal care. Get that target level override for it, but the rest of the target. Then zoom further out. Brought us at least, should fall back to it. Yep, that's right. Efficiency, he's basically letting the range be handled broader. That's right. If you include 100% of your time, you should be redundant since you're managing. Yeah. Yeah, and you'll just find that as you really start to have a consistent, systematic method and you develop that over time, you're going to figure out what works and improves your performance the fastest and moves the needle. And you just need to focus more on what's working and devote more time to that each week, and you're going to see even better performance. So yeah, Nate's on the right track there. So hopefully, this video sheds a bit more light onto some of the confusion around the precedence. I would just recommend hopping in here and playing around with it a little bit. Add a few target level overrides. If you have your account already structured in portfolios for whatever organization method you've done it in, if maybe you have them organized by product, your group of ASINs, if you've got child ASINs all in one portfolio, you can play around with it and just see how it works. You can put the portfolio name in here, change it to a portfolio level override, come up here and actually optimize your file, and then go and look, and you can see how it's adjusted the bids and download. You can download the bid formulas. You can look at the input settings here and just break out your calculator and really get a firm understanding of what's going on. And then also put in some target level overrides that are in a portfolio that's also on here, that maybe you have a campaign that's also on here. So put multiple ones on there and just run through a quick example and try to grasp before you really start moving forward how the whole system works, and it'll become a lot more clear kind of the efficiencies and synergies that you can accomplish. So anyway, hope that helps, and if not, let me know. I can try to shoot another one, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Cheers.